All right, so while we're reading the story, these are the items that you will need. A piece of paper that should look something like mine. Obviously, it does not have to look exactly like mine because you think differently than I do, and that's completely fine. Okay. You're going to want to take notes on the motives of the soldier, because if you'll notice at the top it says soldier. Literature elements, you can either highlight them in the story as we read, or you can list them here on your separate sheet of paper. My recommendation is to highlight and label, but again, it doesn't matter which one you choose to do. Conflicts. Okay. What conflicts do you see in the story? You're going to want these notes. Themes. As we're reading, if you're going, ooh, I just learned something about life here, or ooh, I think the author's trying to tell me something here, jot it down. It doesn't mean it's the theme. It means it might be. And then at the end, we'll go back and we'll look at and go, okay, do you have any evidence to support this for your theme? Or no evidence. It was just a thought, so let's cross that out. And then possible similarities to Devil and Tom Walker. I'm actually going to explain that on the next slide, but I'm going to give you a chance to write this down. Okay. Now let's go ahead and talk about one of the things that I'm asking you to look for, which is the possible similarities to Devil and Tom Walker with satire. What's over here is, are there elements of the satire genre in there? Even though it's not a satire, are the Brothers Grimm, who made the story that we're reading, using satirical elements for kids? Because fairy tales were for kids, whereas satire was, in this time period, aimed towards adults. So are the Brothers Grimm going, you know what? These may be for kids, but I like the satirical elements, so let's go ahead and use them. Or you're like, no, it's got irony and it's got exaggeration, but it is not a satire. Now, and if you don't know this, I'm going to have to turn the lights on so that you guys can see in your story, in your notes. You know what satire is. Okay, we went over it. If you don't know, go ahead and look it up in your notes. Okay. Please remember, let me pause this part. So who can tell me, what is satire? Okay, or give me an element of it if you don't know the exact definition. And I don't necessarily need the exact definition. In your words, what is satire? That is one of the biggest elements of it, so you are correct. Okay. Now, yes, Kayla? Irony. Good. Anyone else? Exaggeration. Excellent. That's one of the biggest ones I was looking for. Now, these elements, they do something. Okay? It's what makes it a satire, because these elements are found in a lot of literature. But when you put these elements in a satire, it's different, because a satire does what? Okay. What makes it a satire, and that's the perfect answer, what makes it a satire versus just having these elements in the story is to criticize people's foolish actions. Now, is it just to criticize, or do they want something to occur? Why would they satirize something? Is it just because they want to be bullies in their stories? No. Okay, that's good. So what do they want to happen? So they're criticizing people's actions, so they want those actions to change. Very good. This is what makes it a satire. We're reading a fairy tale today. And one of the things that I want to make very clear is fairy tales are not satires. Okay. This fairy tale that we're reading, when I looked up the date, said mid-1800s. And the first recorded satire was in 50 BC. So satires have been around a lot earlier than fairy tales. Okay. So fairy tales are not satires. But the question that I have for you, and one of the things that you're looking for in your, that's why the purpose is important, because that's how you're going to determine your answer. Is it causing change? There is no right answer. All you have to do is be able to prove it, okay? Which should be a hint that there's a good chance this will be a test question. Okay? So you might want to keep that in mind as we're reading. All right. So, and of course we have our symbols page as usual. Again, you can put them on paper or you can highlight them as you read. Either one is fine with me. I did kind of leave room for me to write on here. Yours does not have that, but you've got your own paper to the side, back, however you want to do it, as long as it's done. Okay? And you can read it, obviously. Okay? We are going to take turns reading. If you volunteer to read, meaning your hand goes up, you get a stamp, okay, which is great. Now, technically, you wouldn't have to stop here, but I want to make a point, so that's why I'm going to go ahead and do that. Remember in our notes, we talked about the exposition. And the exposition sets up your story. It ends with the introduction of the conflict. Okay, it tells us the setting, it tells us the characters. This one sentence tells us a lot of things. So let's look at what it tells us. What can we say about our soldier and his motivations just based on what she read?
He was young.
Okay, that's a physical description. So we want motives. And actually, if you look at the fact that he's young, that actually does tell us a little bit about him if you think about the characteristics of a young person. Okay, young people can typically be described as what?
Reckless.
Reckless, good. I like that answer. So he is definitely reckless. Okay. So beside that, I'm going to put young simply because that's how you came up with the answer, as long as you remember that young is not a true characteristic of him. It's a physical description. Okay. All right, good. What else? All right, those are excellent answers. Reckless, based on the word young. He's very brave. He's always ready to go to action. Okay. And that he's a leader because he always goes to the front. Now, based on this, and this one's going to take a little bit of thinking on your part. What do you think, and you're predicting here, it hasn't said yet, what do you think our conflict is going to be? What do you think our conflict is going to be? If our exposition is going to set up our conflict, and these are the traits and characteristics and motives of our main character, what could a possible conflict be?
He could die.
Okay, he could die, but if he dies, do we have a story?
No.
No. Okay. Now he could go into more danger, okay, which would definitely be a possible one. The problem with that one is if he goes into more danger, how would he treat that? He would be pretty what? Well, it would be dangerous. Okay. So he looks forward to the danger because he is a reckless soldier. Well, I don't want to say reckless soldier. He's reckless as a youth, but he looks to be a very solid soldier. Okay. And that's his job. He takes it seriously. He's passionate about being a soldier. So what happens if he can't be a soldier anymore, right? So there is our possible conflict. Now, this is a fairy tale, so it's going to tell you like in words. And I could have let you read that, but I wanted to practice your thinking skills and drawing conclusions because in our other stories, it's not as obvious. So, next reader, whoever it was, go ahead.
Me.
Excellent. And so now that we've read this sentence, you can go check. There's our conflict. This would be the end of the exposition. And we're going to mark that because it'll come into play later on. In all of your stories, you're not going to have to go through and label, hey, exposition, rising action, and so forth. But since this ties into the activity we're going to do starting on Friday, I want you to at least have it marked. All right, so yes, end of exposition. We know that the conflict is, oh my gosh, I'm a soldier. Now I have nothing to do. What do I do? Okay. All right, good. I think you actually get to read a little bit on this one before I stop you. All right, go ahead and read the next one, whoever had their hand. All right, very good.
I didn't read it.
I know, I did. Home. Okay. I circled it in blue because it is a symbol. Now, home is one of the most common symbols that you're going to see. We saw it with Devil and Tom Walker. Okay. In Devil and Tom Walker, what was the home like? Someone briefly describe what it was. Was it a nice place? Was it a mansion?
No.
No, it was this horrible what? Hovel, rundown place, right? That's good. Tom Walker and his wife, were they good people? No. So the home symbolizes the home's going to symbolize the character of the people who live there. So if you have this really, really nice mansion and everything about it is nice, not just the outside, but the inside, then the people who live there are good people. Okay? But if you have a house that on the outside looks nice, but on the inside is run down and everything is broken, then that means the people who live in it are hiding something that they're typically deep in their soul bad. Okay. Think of Devil and Tom Walker. Inside and out, it was horrible. And Tom Walker and his wife, inside and out, were just horrible people. So when you see home, always stop and go, okay, what is the home being described as? Because that tells me the truth about what my character is. Because the story itself, it may seem like they're good up until the very end, when you're like, oh my gosh, they're horrible. The home is the foreshadowing or the clue that they're going to give you that says, hey, this is what your character is like. Okay. All right, so now you can finish the sentence. Did it describe our home? No. Okay, so that tells us that our character, it's not that he's one-dimensional, but is only going to have only a few traits. And is it his home?
No, it's his.
Right. It's his brother's home. And so it's not going to reflect him because he doesn't live there. Okay, very good. All right, this is one of my favorite paragraphs. First thing we want to check out is the grammar question, since we're right here. This is one of the bell work questions that we had today. So I'm going to highlight this sentence. The brothers, however, were hard-hearted. The brothers, is that a complete sentence? No. Okay, good. It's just a thought. Were hard-hearted and said, is that a complete sentence? No. Good. It's just a fragment. It's a thought. This word, however, it's combining those two thoughts, isn't it? And so you have a comma and a comma. Remember, semicolons with the word however are only used if you had a complete sentence here and a complete sentence here. That may be why you missed the bell word question when you saw the word however. This is the same type that was in there. And it's really dominant on the ACT, so you want to make sure that you get this right. Now for my favorite reason as to why this is favorite reason of the story. The brothers were hard-hearted. Who knows what that means?
Like they grew apart.
Let's break it down. Hearted. Okay. What is a heart? It's how you live, how you feel. Okay. Okay, what does hard mean? Strong. Okay, that's a synonym for it, yes. Okay, good. Heartless is definitely a synonym. Okay. So the brothers were heartless, and they said, "What can we do with you? We have no work for you. See that you go and make a living for yourself." Are they really being heartless? Record that. It could show conflict between the brothers. That could be why the narrator's calling him heartless. Conflict between brothers. Very nice. All right. I don't want to call your name while I'm recording. Excellent. This is from the soldier's point of view. So remember when we talked about point of view? Okay. Why would you choose first person? Why would you choose third and so forth? Okay. And do we see I in here anywhere?
No.
No. So we know that this is one of the thirds. Okay. And so the purpose of third person point of view is to show how people what? React. Show reactions and character changes. So we need to look at the soldier. Where does he start? Because we know in third person, that's the whole point of third person, is to look at how he reacts and how he changes. So we have to know where he starts to figure out where he's going to end and why the character chose third person. So where's he starting? The word hard-hearted tells us where he's starting. What is it? He's very what? If someone looked at you and said, "You are so hard-hearted," how would you feel? Definitely. Okay. So the character starts out offended and angry that his brothers think that he's lazy. Okay. Now, is he lazy? We don't know enough yet to answer that question. But it seems like that's where they're going with this. So he's starting off on his journey offended and angry. This ties into our conflict. Okay. And it's what's going to have to change as the story progresses. Okay. All right. We are making progress. All right, next reader. We did a lot of work with symbols already, and I don't want to spend our class doing symbols when there's so much more that we need here, but that doesn't mean that we can skip them because they're important too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to circle them as I'm reading, and we'll go back if we have time and look at them, and it's a reminder to you that you need to go back and look at them too because they do play an important part of the story. Okay. Now, we've already talked about some of these. They were in Devil and Tom Walker, but at least you've got there. All right, so we have our first change. He started off very angry, and now he's what? Filled with sorrow. And what does sorrow mean? Okay, good. He's sad. Okay, so, and this is kind of what makes it a fairy tale. Has he really encountered anything that's caused that change? No. Okay, and in typical stories, you do have to have that. Hey, to come to a change, you have to have something to cause that. So that's what makes it a fairy tale. One of those irritating things. All right, next reader. Let's switch colors. Oh, go ahead. Finish that sentence.
So I see that I shall start.
All right, let's talk about our soldier here and the characteristics of him. Okay. Let's talk about his traits. Okay, I don't like the soldier very much here. Why? He's very what? They can no longer use me. I'm going to starve.
Negative.
He is so negative right now. Okay. There's a lot of things in the world he could have done, but instead he's sitting there under a tree going, I'm going to starve. Okay. So he is very, very negative. You are going to need to be able to prove that, so I would highlight my evidence of that so that I don't have to go back and do that later. Anything else that we can add to him?
He's not motivated.
Oh, I love that. He is definitely not motivated.
Man, I was just gonna say that.
Okay. He's another word for that would be lazy. Were his brothers right then?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So his brothers were not being hard-hearted. I don't remember who said it when they said they were just being brutally honest. Okay. So yes, you were right when you saw that. Very good. All right. Next reader. All right. So he's sitting in the woods. Oh my gosh, I am just going to starve because I can't go to war. This man comes up, and this man is dressed stately, which means very dignified, standing up straight. He's wearing a green jacket, but, I see the word but. He had a hideous horse's foot, and this one may take you a minute to find. This is an example of a couple of our literary devices. So using your notes, I want you to go through and see if you can figure out which ones they are. Irony, exaggeration, or what was the third one? Humor. Okay. Now, so when I looked at it, and this is the exact process I went through, he wore a green jacket, looked quite stately, and he had a hideous horse's foot. And I think what made me wonder if it was satire was the hideous horse's foot. Is that where you got it from? Because that's kind of humorous, right? And then so you looked at it, and then you go to the key elements of satire. Causing social change. Now, we don't know yet, it's too early in the story, if this was done to describe change. So we're going to mark it with a question mark because the answer actually comes at the end of the story. Okay. Good. What else? The one that I'm looking for begins with a J.
Just expedition.
That's what I was gonna
I often said it. It's two things or
Yep. So you've got stately, which is this very proud, well-dressed man, juxtaposed with the image of a horse's foot that is hideous. The reason that you know it had to be that one is you saw the word but, and that's a contradiction. So you would look at your elements that are contradictions, which would be paradox, antithesis, obviously juxtaposition, and then go, okay, which one is it? And so it is juxtaposition. And so my question to you is, why does he juxtapose those images? Why have those two images back to back? Why not just say the devil is walking up to him? Because that's who it is.
because he's not trying. Because he's not.
It does have to do with realizing it's the devil. Our soldier is super smart. He knows it's the devil. But think about Devil and Tom Walker. When Tom walks up to the devil, he knows who it is too, but what does he think he can do? Outsmart him. And so the stately part is representative of those people who think what? That they are smarter and better than the devil, whereas the horse's foot is representative of what's really going to happen. So the people who deal with the devil are going to become, well, it's what the horse represents, which is you're right, the corrupt inside, the sinners. Whereas the people who choose not to deal with the devil obviously are going to remain stately or dignified and so forth. Okay, very good. Give her double stamps for that one because it was a great answer. All right, next reader. Okay.
With all your might can squander away, but first I must know if you are good, so that I won't be giving away my money for nothing.
Okay, keep going. Yep, keep going. time-wise, but there's something important in this one. If it does not endanger my salvation. So what can we say about our soldier? He is very what? He is very religious. Now here's the problem that we have. If he is very religious, he knows he's talking to the devil, but he's making a deal with the devil. So that tells you it's an example of what? Irony. Okay. So if he's so religious, why is he dealing with the devil? And you could tie it back into what you said earlier as development of satire. But again, we won't know until later as to whether or not that's true or not. So that's why I keep the question mark beside it. Okay. This part right here has always bothered me when it talks to the soldier, simply because if it doesn't endanger my salvation, he's endangering it himself by making this deal. And so I'm not sure if our character has truly changed yet. Remember, third person is done to show a change through a character. When his brothers throw him out and say, hey, you have to go work, he is selfish. He gets mad at them. He calls them hard-hearted. And at this point, he is still putting off the blame on the devil, endangering my salvation, when he's the one making the deal. So I'm not sure, and again, this is your opinion, you just have to be able to prove it, that he has changed. This reminds me of the part in Devil and Tom Walker where Tom actually walks away from the devil and tells his wife, hey, should I make a deal with the devil? It's almost like he too is trying to put the blame on someone else. Okay? Which ties into satire, right? Is that an aspect of society they want to change? Okay. All right. Stay alive and be rich. Die, devil gets your soul.